Good afternoon, colleagues, dear friends, everyone who is listening to us and watching us. First, I would like to congratulate you on the holidays, and I wish you a very good business 2022. I wish you good health and success. Our today's theme is exporters, and of course I would like to wish all the best to those who are involved in export business in 2022. We understand how 2020 and 2021 played out. We and our exporters, all of us, ran against new challenges such as the digitalization of the economy, the technological transition, the new green agenda, as well as many other issues that have turned many things upside down across the world. Well, at least they have introduced new elements to the world we had been accustomed to. Our exporters, prominent exporters, have encountered these issues as well, far more numerous due to the COVID-19 pandemic, because the logistics issues popped up. There were some bottlenecks. Many of them have not been addressed so far, but we managed to survive, and the economy is growing once again, which of course is gratifying. And I think we've managed to do a lot of many good things, especially in non-commodities exports. By the end of the year, we believe, as colleagues probably will correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be a 40% growth, which is the maximum growth of non-energy, non-commodities export, unprecedented in modern history. And we believe that these are some very good figures. A lot of effort has been exercised by the government. And of course, our entrepreneurs have done their job as well as the associations meant to support our entrepreneurs. Taking stock of last year, we are also casting a glance into future. But when taking stock, we try to understand what we did well, what we didn't do as well as we want, what we are failing at so far, what we have to work on. I have great professionals joining me together in this studio. I think they were all introduced at the screen before the beginning of the session. I'm going to introduce them. Each and every one is a prominent, extraordinary expert in their relevant field.
Well, I have prepared some of the questions to grill them, and all of you will be able to respond and comment. Well, as a custom for us, we, as a custom in this country, we entrust the most important things to women, and they can stop a horse or extinguish a fire. And we'll start with Veronika Nikishina, Director General of the Russian Export Center, which is an institution established by the government to support Russian exports. And recapping the outcomes of the year, they held a forum of exporters, and some of the numbers I have just cited. And I must say that I was greatly pleased and surprised by several of the interventions by mid-sized exporters that were extraordinary ones, non-typical ones. And the situation that I have been speaking about is fraught with risks, but it provides many opportunities also. And those companies were the ones that seized these opportunities. So, well, it's quite often that where I invite some people to mentor and coach us from abroad, or go abroad to study and learn. And this was an exporting company that has established domestically a new product, which is a proprietary Russian company. So apart from all these problems and difficulties, we have learned to work in in the new context and landscape and take advantage of that. And Madam Nikishina, I have 3 quick questions to you. First, you work with exporters on a daily basis. You deal with them. Well, do you think they have adapted to the new context or not? Second, as of today, Russian Export Center has 17 services or competences. Are these 17 windows, or is there a single window in place? And my final question to you relates to what was said at the forum and to what it has a bearing on our topic. What are the achievements and the failures, and what would you like to do and change in this year, 2022? Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, colleagues. Well, currently the typical Russian exporter is a responsible entrepreneur or company that want to derive profits and carry out their business in a sustainable way. So they definitely are guided by the global export trends and patterns, factor them in and look at the domestic situation. The export achievements and performance for Russia and other countries would not be possible amid an economic stagnation. And now the context favors us. The recovery of the global economy has been outpacing the previous expectations. Like in October, the World Trade Organization has updated its World Economic Outlook, and it now expects that the global trade will increase 8 to 11% as a result of the year. There may be some minor adjustments because of the Omicron strain, but the growth will be around 10% still in terms of international trade, which means that the global trade will make for the fall of the 2020 and partly compensate for the 2019 stagnation that we had prior to the pandemic. And there is cautious optimism and tentative expectations that this year we will be back on the growth track for the global international trade. And Russian commodity-based and non-commodity-based exports have caught up with the pre-pandemic exports, and non-commodity exports in the fourth quarter last year has outperformed the 2019 levels. And in parentheses, I want to note that the macro regions responded differently with respect to the economic recovery. The APR countries in mid-2020 reached the pre-COVID export levels in mid-2020. CIS, Europe and the United States surpassed the 2019 levels in mid-2021, while the Middle East and Africa are still beneath the 2019 levels. For us, the champions in exports are pharmaceutical companies, foodstuff suppliers and electronics, thanks to the boom of remote and online solutions. Russian chemical goods and metallurgy, ferrous and non-ferrous metallurgy, that have considerably dropped in the first half of 2020, have rebounded, and now they are on the track to recovery. And thanks to the favorable market and price situation, they have soared and undergone a rapid growth, which also tells on the consumers negatively. Well, but because of the decoupling of the logistics chains and quarantine restrictions and lockdowns and the appreciation of different products, it is now much more difficult to hold business in exports, and the long-term contracts share for exporters is shrinking, and the short-term proportion is on the rise because of the daily price volatility, and direct contracts are now in greater demand, and the distributor's role is becoming less important, and exporters are in search of new markets and on the prowl to find new customers. And third, for the first time in the history of global trade, we're seeing the practical, hands-on interest to decarbonize their production chains among companies. And the limitations on mobility for commodity and goods markets have brought about the online practices, and online trade has gone gangbusters. And we are now seeing that very many companies have parallel sales frameworks online. And this is a new opportunity, a new reality to be able to export more. And we have seen many Russian entrepreneurs who have resorted to the online trade and marketing and started exporting because of the online toolkit, but they didn't do that before. And now all our export support system domestically tries to respond to the needs, matching those needs and providing new opportunities. For example, we have increased our offering of services to support and engage entrepreneurs in our digital and online trade, covering both major enterprises and SMEs. We have around 100 digital platforms on our library that open new avenues for exporters. These may be common platforms, broad range, and some specific niche solutions. And we have been expanding national shops networks at different platforms, like we have opened a foodstuff online store with Alibaba in China, and in 2021, alongside the Post of Russia, which is the main forwarding company for shipments, now we are opening a shop at Amazon, and now we are opening another one in France, and we will set up 3 new trading platforms in Asia this year. As part of the export support, we also will back the B2C in digital commerce to reduce the cost of logistics of international shipments, and now international proxies and representatives hold hybrid and online and offline B2B missions and meetings to reach out to new potential buyers and probe into the new markets, finding new niches to have more focus and more targeted approach while entering new markets. As regards the insurance mechanism, together with the XCR agency, the support pool has increased to 18 billion USD, and the number of exporters that used the insurance support increased by 30% versus 2019. And we also respond to the new challenge of decarbonizing. And this year, we want to offer our own expertise, starting from advisory and consultancy of adapting to the green challenge, and up to providing new support measures together with the federal government, co-funded. And definitely we are trying to lay out new formats of interaction with enterprises and organizations and businesses And you mentioned the one-stop shop of a single window. And as part of that, within that framework, we have established a lab for clients or customers' experience. And we'll keep testing the usability of our services together with our customers and look into the algorithms that underlie our services. What we want is to have the global overarching formative interaction with the business community, and Mr. Vekselberg may confirm my words. We are trying to absorb the requirements and the demands of the business community to be able to come up with new support measures together with the government. And we try to be proactive in dealing with the business community, trying to consolidate the needs and sum up the problems. We want to be quick on the uptake and agile to adapt our system ASAP. As regards the one-stop shop, we launched 25 services last year. This is probably not one single window, but it's already not 17 siloed windows or isolated windows. Now these 25 services can be grouped into 4 groups. Measures of support, educational services and coaching that are relevant for fresh new exporters. These are online courses, you can download them, and there are some personified, customized coaching exercises. Then come analytical services, which is group number 2, allowing to find some target markets and establish first contacts with potential prospective buyers, and to straighten one's path to new markets. The third would be business development and search for partners, and the fourth group of services would be governmental ones. We will also develop that. Apart from the services that are now fledgling, last year we established a marketplace that brings together the export professionals, and the new exporters may find legal or logistical advisory and support, or seek consultations in terms of online trade platforms. They may find partners there. We have partners that are authorized with our marketplaces, and their reputation was verified via a 7-step procedure. And so our exporters may resort to these partners, and last year we launched 4 groups of such services, and this year 5 more groups will lift off. And this year we also want to launch new governmental services, including the receipt of veterinary and phytosanitary certificates for exporters in the digital format, to digitalize the interaction with the government here, with regulators in this respect. So digitalization and the single window for us mean the opportunity to reduce the costs in terms of time, money, and nerves, to deal with the government and regulators and authorities by and large. So our goals are quite ambitious. We want by 2024 to accomplish a situation when the exporters would have their own profiles and their accounts at our platform, That would enable them to receive all necessary support online from the authorities. So definitely this year we'll go digital. We'll continue to go digital and launch more services to have a full-fledged one-stop shop. And that will confirm that we will be moving in the right direction. Thank you very much. I have listened carefully to the ambitious goals of yours and to the multifaceted work of yours, and I kind of thought which at the end of the day is more difficult, to work as a director of the export center or to act as a conventional Russian woman, extinguishing fires and taming in horses, and the Chamber of Commerce and Industry would provide its own advisory. Definitely we have our own perspective, and I hope really that all that you have outlined is going to be implemented to facilitate the business in exporters' communities' potential. Now we have Mr. Vekselberg next to us, who is an experienced exporter that has been around for several decades, and he was invited to chair a working group as part of the efforts to transform the business environment and climate, an expert group on the transformation of the business environment to come up with the proposals on legislative steps to support the exporters. Several questions to you, Mr. Vekselberg. Number one, from the perspective of organizations in the real business community, the governmental institutions and authorities, were they of help to businesses or not? Of real help, I mean, in the past year. And my second question, probably the expert group panel made an analysis. Are there any barriers that hinder the advancement of our exporters? And as I have said today, we're recapping the results of the 2021 and looking at the current year. So what are the outcomes? What have you achieved, and what would you like to achieve this year? Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Dear colleagues, we all are aware that an exporting potential of any country would mirror its economic development, and unfortunately the deep ingrained belief that the Russian Federation is a commodity-based economy and we only export hydrocarbons and fossils and commodities. This perception has been changing gradually, and the non-commodity based export levels have been gradually and incrementally increasing. Last year we exported non-commodities to the tune of 180 billion, which is quite indicative with respect to trends that are being witnessed in the Russian economy. My colleague has already mentioned the main sectors that contributed to the export activities of ours. But I'd like to add that our construction sector, which may be regarded as a litmus test or an epitome of the economic change that is happening in this country, has been developing rapidly. And what we see is that the role of the government is active, proactive and constructive. They have been implementing the Exporters Support Program. We have the roadmap that is entitled Goods and Services Exports. It was put into operation several years ago, and the business community actively participate in these efforts and supervise the implementation. You know, when it all happened,
Well, I've been around for very many years. I am quite a knowledgeable, savvy businessman, so I back then was skeptical with respect to the expert group. I treated that with a grain of salt, and the Chamber of Trade and Industry, Opora Rossii, Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, and other unions and alliances concurred in that expert group, made part of that expert group, and I thought it would be like a formal exercise, but I would like to note with satisfaction that what we see actually is that no single decision is made without discussing and coordinating that decision with our expert community, and they are quite heated every now and then, but at the end of the day we are able to arrive at the results, to accomplish the results and outcomes that would be a positive impact for the system and framework of exports in this country. So the roadmap is underway, it is implemented, and 13 points or items on that roadmap have already been enacted and approved by the government, and the legal acts were passed. And let me cite a few examples so that you have an idea of what we have been able to fix and sort out. Well, among the measures that we accomplished is like the cancellation of the customs levies for the re-export of goods. Well, once we had this legal norm, and we decided to repeal that because it was considered redundant and excessive, and the business community were rid of some red tape. Well, it was absolutely excessive, and we got rid of that. And the second example I want to cite is that we have now achieved a decision on the repeated use of the papers released by the Customs and Exports Control Service of the Russian Federation. You know, the dual-use goods and items are subject to some special regulation procedures, and you are to receive an expert opinion. And previously, it was required to receive such an opinion for each transaction, for each operation, which was a burden. It was quite irksome, and today we have streamlined that and improved that. You may use those certificates on a recurrent basis, on a repeated basis, and thus we have done away with a great deal of administrative and other barriers. Then comes a very sensitive forex control sphere, and one of the achievements here is the cancellation of the norm to return the foreign currency denominated revenue. And now all banks are entitled to participate, not only those that are on Russian soil. And when we now see that Russian exporters may have some problems in dealing with financial institutions or banks abroad, providing them with extra flexibility and giving them an opportunity to channel their foreign currency revenue to the accounts of all banks would make their life much easier and would expand the number of their counterparties, prospective counterparties. So this list is extended. So anyway, these are just a few examples of many others, proving that we are on track for much more efficiency and moving in the right direction. As for the forthcoming or the current year, one of the unresolved
issues is to more efficiently integrate the Russian economy into international logistical chains, and the regime of processing on customs territory is an issue that should be resolved, and it is very good and very important that this issue was put on the list for the roadmap, and the legal act has been released, and it's not only about processing the raw materials. No, it means much more. It has a much broader application. It means the format of how our exporters may fit into the global chains, like we receive some of the components or spare parts or any other raw materials, and would then export a new stage of processing goods at a new stage of processing to the international market, and that would make their life much easier. And the second huge issue that I want to highlight is the foreign currency and export control. Well, for all the exporters, it is a very important matter. They sign the necessary papers, they undertake liabilities, and definitely they hence are scrutinized closely by the regulators, and probably in the Soviet times that was justified. But today we know that the prevailing part of exporters are normal, transparent businesses with a clear system of reporting, and probably time is ripe for us to move to a new level. And I'd like to thank the central bank and the finance ministry and the federal government for their eagerness to switch more actively to the risk-oriented control for the exporters. It should not be sweeping control, but selective, with much less encumbrances for the business community. And today we have laid out the main tenets and principles of that new treatment, with brand new approaches related to the export and forex control.
On a particular note, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to Veronika for the great job that the Russian Export Center is doing at this point in time. Over a very short period of time, the center has accomplished some prominent results, and we now got a very good government tool that is going to be in high demand, and that is going to be of great assistance to our exporters. And as Madam Nikishina has said, what we are planning for is going to become reality. It's not just going to be some plans, some projects. This is going to be a concrete mechanism for cooperation between the government and the exporters. I would like to emphasize in particular that this work is going to involve the transition towards the digital, from print to electronic. We understand that our exporters have to fill in loads of documents, and this is nothing but a vestige of the past system, which prevents us from working as efficiently and as successfully as possible. So this is a very good example we can cite, and we can show that a very big part of the paper and the document turnout has gone fully digital. And if there is the single window service, you don't need to submit the same documents all over again. You can do that through this electronic system. I would also like to underscore that within the framework of this roadmap on the export of services and goods, we have kind of a dogma, a principle we have an agreement that our experts will constantly monitor the system, and they will have a chance to turn to the government proposing initiatives on how to improve the current initiatives and to introduce new ones. The dialogue we've managed to foster, the discussion we are having, give me confidence that even if this system is not foolproof, it is still going to function, removing administrative barriers, reducing additional costs that are still extant in our system. A couple of words about the prospects. I would like to dwell a little bit on the current state of affairs. There are some challenges that we are facing, and it's not just the pandemic. I would call the current state of affairs an ideal storm because you have the pandemic, the political factors that also have a bearing on our conditions. Then there is the digital transformation, and a particular note, there is the issue of energy transition, the green transition. And in this particular context, I would like to draw your attention to the following. I believe that Russia has great prospects as an exporter of technological as well as other solutions to the world markets, given the needs and requirements that are put forth because of the energy transition. Just to cite an example, I believe in the great potential of our economy. Let's have a look at our group. Whoever could have imagined 5 years ago an alternative energy system in our country? It wasn't even something we talked about. By now, however, we have established this industry and it's export-oriented. We are exporting solar panels to more than 10 countries, as well as spare parts, as well as technological solutions. And in terms of ESG, the Russian economy's potential is immense. And yes, there is the issue of decreasing the financial burden that has to be addressed. But apart from that, we need to support exporters who can offer cutting-edge solutions in energy transition to the world. Thank you very much, Mr. Vekselberg. As far as I can tell from the discussions that are underway at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I would like to say that you look in great detail at what's happening in this field, and we've been talking about export duties for quite some time, but as you know, it's one step at a time, and you managed to help us move the current situation, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't thank you on behalf of all the exporters for your efforts. This is a very good and important part of the world supply chain. We have yet another participant of our discussion, that is the head of our Economic Council of the Chamber of Commerce, the director of the All-Russian Market Research Institute. I hope I named it correctly. So every exporter who decides to export needs to understand first where to export, what markets are there. Veronika has already told us how it's all organized and structured, but we need to have a better understanding of where our produce is going to be in demand, where it's going to be needed. Yes, as we've pointed out, the times have been difficult. We've managed to survive, however. But how and in what way have Russian markets changed? And in future, what will happen? Many say that we are shifting from Europe to Asia, to the Asia-Pacific, to Latin America, and elsewhere. So, are you witnessing this shift? And last but not least, what about our participation in the global supply chains? Thank you, Sergey Nikolaevich. I would like to say a couple of words about the development of our exports before. We've managed to hit a record in non-energy, non-commodities export, not just in modern Russian history, but also it's an unprecedented Russian history record. Even during the Soviet time, even if you account for inflation, we've never hit such indicators before. So it's not just we have more officials than the Soviet Union used to have, something that is, in fact, often cited. But our non-energy, non-commodities export has also hit a record high as compared to the Soviet history. Now, with Veronika and with all the rest who are in export development, we have been having many discussions. As we can see, we've been searching for the last 2 decades what we had failed to do, what we were lacking, what tools we needed. And right now, we see that it's different, and even foreign researchers are studying the Russian experience, trying to understand what else they, on their side, can do to develop their export support system. What we are somewhat lacking still is consolidation and the foreign track, as it were. We need to better coordinate all our agencies, all the tools we have at our disposal to promote our exports. We need our diplomatic missions, consulates, to be more active. When they're engaged in their routine works, they also have to give due regard to promoting our exports. Now, as far as export markets are concerned, I can say that there is some inertia involved. Let's have a look at how things stood at the beginning of the 20th century, the 19th century. Persia is not there, Korea is not there, but on the whole, the list is as it used to be, because there is the culture, there is the geography, and also traditions. If we look at the period post the sanctions introduced at Russia, we had to activate, to intensify our work promoting our exports. And right now, we've got new export destinations like Uzbekistan, the UAE. Uzbekistan is now garnering a great deal of attention because it's a huge construction plot. The Republic of Korea ranks now 10th, and Turkey is also becoming an increasingly important export destination for us. And there is a huge possibility that Turkey is going to play an increasingly important part, because this is where the centers for global supply chains is going to shift, because Turkey has the requisite competencies and the logistics is good. We also have new countries which we never spoke of in the past, like Senegal in Africa. No one mentioned them in the past. But if we look at 2021, we can see that Senegal is Russia's biggest trade partner in Africa. Yes, maybe that's due to oil products, some specific things, but also fertilizers, also food. Yes, the structure of export is very similar, but it's still interesting. We've got to see that, we've got to analyze that. And when we try to understand where we can bolster our presence, commercial presence in particular, we have to take that into account. Now, what comes next? Well, we can speculate on how the geographic scope of our export is going to develop, but that is dependent on our economic dynamics, on how our economies will grow. All international organizations say that Indonesia, the Philippines, Mexico, Nigeria can be promising partners, just like Bangladesh. And there are estimates that they will get better economic heft. They will become increasingly important from the economic point of view on international scale because their economy is growing, their market is growing. Another factor to keep track of is countries that turn into hubs for international agreements, for integration associations. Besides, there is the issue of countries that strike an FTA agreement with Russia. Let's take the example of Vietnam. Besides, there is Egypt, which is one of the most active participants of the Trans-African FTA area, which is under active construction but still has a long way to go. But if such an FTA were established across Africa, that would be huge. And another issue to bear in mind is the change in structure of exports and consumption. In many countries, developing countries, middle class is emerging. They are quite well-to-do. So far, they require some produce that is not too expensive, and Russia can be the provider of such goods and services. Let's have a look at China over the recent decades, at the goods we are trading. They can be used to satisfy the needs of the middle class, like meat, because, the food consumption patterns are changing, shifting, and also pastries and sweets, chocolate, jewelry, gems, precious stones, cosmetics. And if we look at our export to China, then you'll see that since 2000, from 2 million, it has almost risen to 2 billion in 2020, which is also relevant. So, yes, the patterns of consumption are changing even in such a big country as China. And how the middle class affects that is a very interesting topic to look into, to discuss. You see, the middle class in many countries want to buy high-quality produce. So far, they cannot afford the most expensive products, but they want something good, and we can provide them that. Now, the pandemic is another factor. The dynamics is very good. Over the 10 months of 2021, we sold $1.3 billion worth of vaccines. Before, that was just 50, maybe 70 million. The dynamics is very, very good. And apart from the vaccines, it's test kits and also immuno-strengthening medicines. This is a very important cluster that can bring about important shifts in consumption in Africa, in Latin America. It all can have an impact. And besides, there is the intensification of such issues as food problems and energy problems, environmental projects. And if, it continues as it is right now, we can be the purveyors of agricultural products, like the products that require a great deal of water because we have immense water resources. Now, global supplies chains is something you asked me about as well. And they are changing, they're shifting, they're moving closer to cheaper factors of production. And sometimes you establish supply chains just in case. In hubs, where the consumption is concentrated. And if we want to integrate ourselves into these supply chains, we have to take account of all of these factors. The peak in terms of volume is behind us, but what we need to focus on is quality. And we have to treat carefully such things as ESG, non-financial reporting for those who participate in these supply chains. There is an active discussion on that, and a lot has been done to pursue this avenue, so I think we'll succeed. Thank you very much. I would like everyone who has taken part in our discussion. I would like to thank our today's speakers. Thanks a lot. I do hope that the issues we've discussed, our plans for the current year, that is something that we will try to work on in close collaboration with the government and with the business community. Thank you.